There's something rather peculiar about the way we try to rescue one another from our delusions. It's as though we imagine ourselves standing on a firm, dry patch of reality, reaching out to pull some poor soul from the quicksand of their illusion, all the while quite oblivious to the fact that our own ground is just another sort of swamp, perhaps slightly better lit. We're terribly fond of this idea of helping, of saving, of correcting others. But it is precisely this impulse that most often binds us all the tighter to the very illusions we think we're escaping. For when you set out to help someone from illusion, what you are secretly assuming is that you are not under illusion. And that, my dear friends, is the most intoxicating illusion of all. It's like the drunkard who insists he's sober enough to drive everyone home. You see, the very notion of helping, in this way, presupposes a division. Me, the enlightened one, and you, the deluded fool. And yet, in the dance of life, there is no separate floor on which the enlightened stand. We all whirl about on the same spinning earth, dizzy under the same sky. Now, that doesn't mean one should be callous or indifferent to the suffering of others. Compassion, you see, isn't the same as meddling. Compassion is the quiet warmth that understands. Without condescension, the people must awaken in their own way, in their own time. You cannot yank open a bud and call it helping the flower bloom. The petals tear, the fragrance is lost. All you can do is provide sunlight, water, and the patience of space. But we are a most impatient species. We want to fix things now. We want to rid the world of folly, of confusion, of what we call ignorance. Yet, the very eagerness to correct creates more confusion, because what we're actually doing is projecting our discomfort with ambiguity, our fear of chaos, onto others. We want them to be healed, but in truth, we're trying to reassure ourselves that the world can be tidied up, that there is somewhere a clean distinction between truth and falsehood, sanity and madness. But have you noticed that the more one insists on being sane, the more neurotic one becomes? The more one claims to be certain, the less one is capable of wonder. That is why the wise are gentle. They do not rush to rescue others from illusion, because they know that every illusion has its role to play. Just as clouds are not an error in the sky, but part of its own mysterious patterning, so too are the illusions of men and women necessary expressions of the cosmic play. You see, the universe itself is a grand illusionist, Maya, the dance of appearances. And the divine trick, the cosmic joke, is that the illusion is not something to be escaped, but to be seen through. When you see through it, you do not destroy it. You appreciate it, as you appreciate the shimmer of light upon the surface of water. You no longer drown in it, but nor do you dry it up. You see it for what it is, a mirage that reveals rather than conceals the desert beneath. So when you meet someone who seems utterly lost in illusion, who clings desperately to their dogmas, their fears, their fixed ideas, resist the urge to hammer down their walls. That is the surest way to make them build thicker ones. Instead, listen, laugh softly. Allow the echo of your laughter to remind them, if they are ready to hear it, that all their seriousness is part of the game. A little laughter, I've found, can loosen the iron grip of delusion far more effectively than a sermon. For after all, what is illusion? It is not something bad. It is simply the play of the mind, taking itself too seriously. The ego is the cosmic clown who has forgotten. It is wearing a mask, and when you rush to tear off another person's mask, you often frighten them, or worse, convince them that the mask is all they are. This is why every genuine spiritual teacher, whether it's Lao Tzu, the Buddha, or Jesus, proceeds not by force, but by a kind of divine mischief. They speak in riddles, parables, and jokes. They refuse to give you the answer because they know the answer would only become another illusion. They leave you puzzled, slightly irritated, and then if you're lucky, laughing. And that laughter is the first crack in the wall of illusion. I once said that to define yourself is to limit yourself, and that applies equally to helping others. The moment you define someone as trapped, you've already built a trap for them and for yourself. Because you begin relating not to the living person before you, but to your concept of their bondage. True help, if it can be called that at all, is not intervention, but invitation. You invite another into a space of seeing, not by preaching, but by being. You see, when you yourself are no longer desperately trying to fix reality, when you've made peace with its dreamlike quality, that peace becomes contagious. People begin to feel it, often without understanding why. They sense, perhaps for the first time, that there's no need to be anyone in particular, no need to cling to ideas or images to justify existence. And in that quiet recognition, illusion begins to dissolve naturally, like mist in the morning sun. But if you march into the mist shouting, "It's all an illusion, wake up," the mist only thickens. For you have made war with the very fabric of the dream, and the dream loves nothing more than conflict. So the secret is not to fight illusion, but to dance with it, to play along, knowing the tune. You know, there's a beautiful old Zen story about a monk who was trying to help his brother attain enlightenment. The brother was terribly earnest, always meditating, fasting, trying every technique. One day, the helpful monk said, "I think I can help you. Sit here and meditate on the Buddha nature within." The brother sat. The monk picked up a brick and began to polish it. The brother asked, "What are you doing?" The monk said, "I'm polishing this brick to make it into a mirror." The brother laughed, "You can't make a mirror out of a brick." And the monk smiled. "Then how can you make a Buddha out of your mind?" That's it, you see. The desire to help is noble only when it comes without a hidden agenda, without the secret wish to see one's reflection shining in another. Otherwise, we end up polishing bricks. And yet, paradoxically, it is precisely through such folly that awakening happens. The would-be savior, exhausted from trying to fix the world, suddenly collapses into laughter, realizing that there was nothing wrong with it in the first place. That is the real help, the help that happens when no one is helping. When the distinction between helper and helped dissolves like sugar in tea. So, the danger of helping people trapped in illusion is that you may tighten the net even as you think you're cutting it. You may give them another illusion, the illusion of being saved, and they will cling to you, worship you, quote you, until they've built a new temple of ignorance in your name. And then, what will you do? You'll have to destroy the temple, and then they'll call you a heretic. Ha! Such is the cosmic comedy. Therefore, the wisest thing you can do, if you truly wish to help, is to help without trying, to listen without judging, to act without believing that you are acting rightly. Then, like a mirror, you reflect the light without grabbing it. For in the end, no one truly awakens anyone else. People simply awaken together, like flowers opening under the same sun. And the sunlight, if you must call it anything, is love. Not sentimental love, but the boundless acceptance that allows all illusions to play themselves out until they are spent. So, let the world be as it is. Let the madmen preach, the dreamers dream, the fools chase their shadows, and you play your part with joy. Smile at the grand illusion, for it is God pretending to be confused. And when you see that clearly, you'll realize that even your impulse to help was never yours to begin with. It was the universe reminding itself that the dream is not yet over, but that the dreamer is already awake. Ah, yes, let's go on. Because the story, you see, does not end with realizing that helping can be dangerous. That's only the beginning, the moment when the do-gooder begins to suspect that his very goodness might be part of the game. But once that suspicion dawns, once the rescuer begins to doubt the sanctity of his own ladder, then something truly marvelous begins to happen. He starts to help in quite a different way. Instead of lifting others up to some imagined higher ground, he sits down beside them. He joins them in their dream, not as a missionary, but as a playmate. He ceases to be the solemn surgeon of the soul and becomes the clown, the sacred fool who laughs at his own seriousness. And through that laughter, he gives permission for others to laugh too. You see, laughter is the language of release. It is the sound the universe makes when it suddenly realizes it's been holding its breath. When you laugh, the illusion loosens its grip, because you are no longer fighting it. You are playing with it. And the world, for all its apparent tragedy and confusion, is a cosmic play. The Hindus call it Leela, divine play. But play, you see, has no goal. The moment play becomes serious, it ceases to be play and turns into a kind of labor, a struggle for victory. And in that struggle, you forget that the point was never to win, but to enjoy the dance itself. So, if you are to help anyone truly, it must be through the spirit of play, by inviting them to join you in not taking the whole thing so dreadfully seriously. That's the difference between compassion and pity. Pity stands above, looking down, saying, "Oh, you poor thing." Compassion kneels beside and says, "Ah, yes, I know this dance. Isn't it curious?" Pity separates. Compassion joins. Pity reinforces illusion. Compassion dissolves it by seeing through the separateness altogether. When you see the world through compassion, you realize there is no other. There are only different masks of the same eternal actor, the self playing hide and seek, the madman, the saint, the fool, the philosopher. All are facets of the same crystal, refracting the same light in 1,000 shimmering ways. To help another, then, is simply to love that face of yourself as it appears in them. And love, real love, has this extraordinary quality. It does not correct, it includes. It does not reform, it embraces. It does not say, "You must change," but rather, "You are already perfect in your confusion." For when love looks at illusion, it sees not something false, but something incomplete. A wave that has forgotten it is the ocean. But you cannot tell a wave it is the ocean if you yourself have not felt it in your bones. And that feeling comes only when you cease to strive for enlightenment as an achievement and begin to allow enlightenment to be what it already is, the natural condition of being awake in this very moment, in this very dream. So, the wise one helps by being at ease in the illusion, not by escaping it, but by enjoying it. And that enjoyment, that ease, is infectious. You might call it spiritual osmosis. Just as one candle lights another without effort, the presence of someone at peace with the play of life lights the same peace in those nearby. Not through teaching, not through technique, but through the silent transmission of being. When the Buddha walked through the villages of India, he didn't preach truth in the way we imagine. He radiated stillness. When Jesus spoke in parables, he wasn't explaining, he was evoking. They both understood that truth cannot be told. It can only be hinted at, danced around, laughed with. The moment you put it into words, the words themselves become another veil. And yet, what delightful veils they are. You see, we are forever veiling and unveiling the same mystery. The illusion is not an error to be corrected, but a rhythm in the music of existence. There is no melody without both sound and silence, no dance without the play of steps and stillness. And so the helper, once he has seen this, no longer tries to stop the music. He listens and joins in time. Now, this joining, this effortless participation, is what the Zen people mean when they say, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water, After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. For nothing changes on the surface. What changes is the mood of participation. The helping hand remains, but the anxiety to make things right has vanished. You may still feed the hungry, comfort the sad, teach the ignorant, but you do it not because you think the world is broken, but because it's your delight to do so. The act becomes a gesture of celebration, not correction. You give, not to fix, but to share in the overflowing abundance of being. And that is the secret that turns dangerous helping into divine play. For when you no longer help out of duty, but out of joy, your actions cease to bind. They leave no residue, no karmic footprint. You are simply the wind moving through the trees, the wave returning to the sea. The paradox of it all is that the less seriously you take the mission of saving others, the more profoundly your presence liberates them, because you no longer need them to change. You no longer need them to validate your idea of goodness. You allow them to be utterly, outrageously themselves. And in that allowance, something miraculous happens. People begin to relax. They stop defending their illusions. They start to laugh at them. And in that laughter, awakening happens of its own accord. It's as if the universe says, "Ah, at last, someone has remembered the joke." And in that moment, you see that every illusion was part of the comedy, every tragedy a setup for divine laughter. The helper and the helped were both characters in the same grand pantomime, pretending to be lost so that they might rediscover themselves with renewed wonder. You know, it's like a child building a sandcastle at the edge of the sea. The tide comes in and washes it away. The child cries for a moment, but then, after a little while, he laughs and begins building again, because he understands, somewhere deep down, that the joy was never in preserving the castle, but in the making of it. The waves, the sand, the laughter. That was the whole point. So when you see someone clinging to illusion, remember the child. Don't rush in to stop the tide for them. You'll only drown yourself. Instead, sit beside them and maybe build your own castle for a while. Let them feel, through your play, that the sea is friendly after all. And perhaps, when the water finally comes to claim their towers, they'll laugh too. They'll see that the tide was never the enemy, but the great rhythm of life itself, endlessly giving and taking, creating and dissolving, laughing all the while. That, my friends, is the art of helping without helping, of being a mirror in which the divine play recognizes itself.